Hi, my name is Tria Jackson, and I am here doing my third podcast about foster care. Actually, continuing our conversation about foster care and the issues in foster care, how it feels to be a foster kid, and so I will tell you that I grew up in the system of foster care, primarily in Illinois, as I had stated on my previous podcast, and I did go to a few different states. So I did see the foster care system in California, especially in Florida, and a few other states. But I actually got the same response in the different states. Seemed to be a lot of problems in the system. So it's not just here in Illinois. It's in California, it's in Florida, and other kids have been moved around, like from Georgia and New York. I mean, we were a bunch of traveling kids, and we couldn't find a home. And I really, I wished that it was different. I wished I could say that I had this great experience and I found parents that would love me and I had a stable life. But instead, I had quite the opposite. And I don't like to hark on the negative. I did meet a few kids that were in good homes and then they were removed because they were actually abused in good foster homes. They thought it was a good foster home, but then they were actually emotionally abused. And I'm going to tell you what happens in foster care when you go to a home. And foster parents don't really want to cooperate with the visitation of the children in their care. And it could be various reasons why foster parents just do not want to cooperate. Sometimes they know these kids are never going to go home. Sometimes they get very attached to the kids, so they then start to manipulate the situation. Or the child actually says, hey, I don't want to visit this person. I don't want to visit this person at all. And actually, foster parents cannot really refuse the visitation rights of the parents, the loved ones that are involved in their treatment while they're in the care of DFS or Child Protective Services or the Child Welfare System, as you want to call it. So when kids are forced to visit, and I'll give you an example. I was forced to visit a woman, and she was my legal guardian, and she was a really bad person. She had hurt me a lot. She allowed people to hurt me. And now they want me to visit her. I was said to be a permanent case. I was not going back home. So I ended up going to court a lot. I remember going in front of the judge and going in there, and I didn't really feel any fear of that because I didn't have any clue what was going on. I just sit there all day and all day and all day. When I got a little bit older, I did realize that the guy up there, the judge, had a lot of power, and he could say, no, you can't go here, you can't go there. So I ended up with these visitations through Catholic Charities at first. And I had to go visit this person, and I noticed that my foster parents weren't too, and they didn't like it. They thought this woman was bad, and she was. She was bad. That's one thing that I could say I agreed with them with. But they didn't talk to me about it, really. They just started to say really negative things. And I really didn't have the full understanding and capacity to understand what was going on and how it was happening. So they tried to shut down visitation. And of course, Catholic Charities, the caseworker, said, no, you can't do that. Rights have to be, I remember something about terminated. But my foster parents were very much into bashing this person. And they didn't realize that it kind of bothered me. Whenever I tried to say it bothered me, this woman doesn't care about you. Look what she let all these people do. But they didn't let me talk about what happened. So they would tell me that she did all these bad things. I know she did all these bad things. I needed someone to talk to about it, but I wasn't allowed to talk about it. And I did eventually try to tell my caseworker, I want to talk to someone about this. And she would tell me, my caseworker would tell me that, well, you've been placed in a good home. You placed in a good home and you could talk to them. After so many times of trying to tell her, I just didn't tell her anything at all. And I didn't see my caseworker very often. I think I said in the previous podcast that I only saw her a couple times while I was in this home. And it was very difficult to understand all the aspect. So who are the key players in the foster child's life? Who is part of the team that is to help take care of you while you're in the system? So you, of course, have yourself. Then there's, caseworkers. There's the foster parents. There's judges, and there's other people. Like sometimes it would be a therapist and doctors, and it depends like what kind of needs you had. Like if you had a special need, there were kids who were in wheelchairs. Some kids were really, they really had significant issues. So I didn't have significant issues. So I think I just had foster parents, and I just had the judges and the caseworkers. The caseworkers I rarely saw. And at this point, when I first entered the system, every time we would go, like I told you that we went to Cuneo, there were other welcome centers. They were called, and they were basically like, okay, you're here, you're gonna be in this place. And there were so many kids that we slept on the floor sometimes. We didn't have blankets, we didn't have pillows. There were holes in the wall. So I was lucky when I was put in for the third time in the foster care system. It was June, so it wasn't too cold. But there were bugs crawling around, and we had visitors, let's just put it like that. And the people were really loud. People were just really loud. I'm not talking about kids, because kids are always loud, right? The staff members were really loud. And sometimes they would be talking about stuff they shouldn't have been talking about. And they didn't seem to like us very much, So they're working with kids, but they don't like us very much. And it wasn't everybody. It wasn't all of them. I had a few nice people, and as long as I had one nice person, I was good to go. The kids, you didn't really try to be friends with these kids because you weren't going to stay there very long. Some of us stayed longer, some of us didn't. I also noticed at a young age that there were girls that were pregnant, and they were they were fighting and stuff, and I don't know, it's a lot of confusion going on. But anyway, I would go to court every so often. There'd be a judge there. You go to a side room, you talk to the judge, and of course you didn't want to say anything bad about your foster parents, right? You didn't want to do that, because if you did say something about your foster parents, you had to go home with them, right? Or you ended up somewhere worse. So you were always scared to tell, just like you were when you were like with your parents, you were scared to talk about that, the true stuff that's going on. So this, I did have, when I did go to foster homes, I usually did have a bed. So at least I got a bed. And I got food for the most part. There were some homes that would limit the foster kids on food. Like they would say they got money for us, and they only had so much money in a month. And so we kind of like would get different food from the other family members, like if they had kids and stuff in the home. So I just kind of accepted that. I was like, okay, food is food, right? I didn't realize until I got older that something wasn't right. And then we would get what's called clothing vouchers, and we got them twice a year. And I remember some foster parents were just like sneaky. They were sneaky. They would like have their biological kids there. So they would make sure that their biological kids got some stuff out of it. So it was supposed to be for us, but it wasn't always for us. So, but then there were some foster homes who they would buy you stuff all the time. I mean, I was like given clothes, so many clothes, and I'm like, wow. I thought it was Christmas in a way, like it was like a super duper holiday because I got clothes and stuff. And so I was happy with that. But then sometimes I would get things, and in these homes I would be mistreated. So they would buy you clothes and make you look nice and everything. And then they weren't so kind to you. And I really liked to get books. I really loved getting books. I loved going to the library and reading and stuff like that. I liked going to school, but I wasn't used to going to school. So in the beginning, it was different. When I went to a foster home and I would go, I would go to school and almost have that kind of normal life. But then I would have the visitations, I would have the interruptions, I would have the court dates, I would have all this. And why are you absent from school? I had to go to court. Really? The kids would be like, why? Did you do something wrong? I was like, no, I didn't do anything wrong. I don't know why. Nothing was explained to me. And when I did ask questions, I didn't get answers. So eventually visitation stopped. They were able to stop it. And I was happy with that in a sense. But then all I had was these people. And like I said, I was in this home for 4 years. And he was the one who was the foster father that stopped the visitation. But there was no talks of adoption or anything like that. I remember there was a couple kids in my classroom who said that they had friends and friends of the family that adopted some kids. So I remember one day I asked my foster father. He wasn't the nicest person, but at least I had a home, right? Well, I went and asked him. I said, so am I going to be adopted? I think I was about 7 or 8. And he said, not here. And I just kind of looked at him. And I was like, why not? They said, because we're not going to adopt you. And it was kind of said in such a way that I didn't really understand that there had to be people who had to approve the adoption or anything. But I didn't understand why I had another foster brother, and he had been there for 6 years, and he wasn't adopted. They had adopted a whole bunch of other kids, so I don't know if there was a limit on how many kids you could adopt or what. But I just kind of felt like I wasn't part of the family, really. I felt like a sideshow of the family. I didn't understand my feelings. I felt no connection to the people that I lived with. And those kind of feelings kind of grew. They manifested, and I was going through a lot. I was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. I had a lot of anxiety. I didn't like myself. I thought I was ugly. I thought I wasn't a pretty child. And then my foster brothers, sometimes they would be joking, but they would say that I was ugly. And I don't think they realized how bad that made me feel. And again, I know when to talk to, to say, oh, they said this to me, and it'd just be like, oh, they're just joking. I'm supposed to just basically understand that and move forward. So my caseworker, I rarely saw, like I have stated before, and my foster parents were either there or not there. So I went ahead and just did what normal kids do, I lived on a farm. I would just walk around the farm with my dogs, and it was lonely being on a farm. It really was. I mean, it was just the only sounds you had was the trucks that went by and the trains that, came by, and, a few times a day. I don't think they realized how bad it was for me. At some point, I leave this foster home and I end up in some other placements. So I'll tell you some other secrets that go on, and these are things that other girls know too. So the abuse that happens in the system is not always physical. It's not always emotional. It's not a mental thing where we're manipulated. I mean, all those things happen, but sometimes it is sexual. There is a lot of sexual abuse that goes on in the foster care system, and it is hidden from a lot of people. And again, they have the perfect opportunity. The people who do sexually abuse us, they have access to children. And everyone looks up to foster parents. And I'm not saying all foster parents are bad, by no means. But there are some people who become foster parents for the wrong reason. And I became a victim of sexual abuse in the foster care system. And some girls had come into the foster care system already sexually abused. Like myself, I was too, but some girls were the products of their mothers were drug addicts. And they would actually, get drugs in exchange for giving some guy some minutes with their daughter. And some of these girls were really young, like 8 and 9 years old. And I don't think a parent realizes how bad that is and how that just alters a girl's thinking of what this person is doing, to her. And it's an awful feeling to be used in that way. And so when girls got older, they got this attention from guys like this. Like, I'll give you this and you give me this. It was like an even exchange. Then at some point the girl gets pregnant and then she's having a baby, and then that baby ends up being a foster child because they're like 13, 14 years old having babies, and then that kid gets taken away. I've met many generations or 3 generations of kids, the family members that, the child, the grandmother, and the great-grandmother, and they're like young people, and you think, wow, you're a grandmother, So I encountered girls who would tell their stories and say that they had been sexually abused by their foster brother or their foster father, or like an uncle that would come over and visit them. And of course, I was scared. And when I was about 10 years old, I became aware of these stories a little too often than I should have. Girls would say, they would really tell you, they normalized it. They really did. They just normalized it, it just hurts this time, and any other time, you don't like doing it, but they go in there and they force you to do it. And if you don't, they won't feed you, they won't do this. And I was just hearing all these stories. And you could say one person's lying, 2 people lying, but it was a lot of girls. And a lot of these girls had already had babies, and they were about 14. They had already had children, and they didn't know where their kids were. They said that, I don't know, they came and took the kid, and I don't have the child with me, and now they're pregnant again. And it's like, whoa, what's going on here? And there were a lot of girls that were subjected to this. And as they got older, and when I mean older, they were like between the ages of 12 and 16, they would start, selling themselves. They would say that they were part of an escort service. They would meet up at hotels with guys, and they said, well, at least I'm getting paid. People used to take it, and now I'm getting paid. And there was staff members who enjoyed in this too. And they worked at the group homes, and they would be sleeping with these girls. And they would give them favors. And I was told to make sure when you wear your pajamas, to wear extra layers underneath so that it's not easy to access you. And I'm just thinking, oh my God, you're really joking me. I was scared. I was scared for a long time And then, of course, I did go to a foster home where my foster father and his biological sons actually started abusing the girls at the home. And it was really sad. It was really sad, and I was scared. And I saw the foster father and how he would look at us. And I was a little bit on the younger side, but these other girls, he would come in the room at night, and the foster brothers would come in the room at night. And there were terrible things going on. At that point, I just kind of shut down. I didn't know, should I tell? Should I not tell? What should I do? I was very conflicted at that point, because we're always going to be salt as the liars. So I didn't know if I should tell. But eventually, I guess one of the girls, from what I understood, she got pregnant. And they found out that it was the foster father who may have been the father. But it's what he did to her when she found out she was pregnant. He yelled at her and he screamed at her and degraded her, so saying that she was going and running in the streets with the boys. But it turns out it was his kid. And so he said he didn't want her no more. Of course he didn't want her anymore because then it could be proven it was his kid. I heard there was a test at that point that they could do. Of course now I know it's like a DNA test, but but this is things that girls are subjected to in the foster care system. And I'm sure that boys are subjected to this too. But I didn't meet any boys that had been sexually abused while I was a foster child, except one. There was one boy who said that he was sexually abused by his foster mother. His foster mother used to sexually abuse him, and he was really messed up. He ended up in the hospital a lot, and don't know what happened to him at some point. I ran into him at Cuneo Shelter quite a few times, but he was really just struggling, just like a lot of his kids were. So there is sexual abuse in the foster care system, and no one takes accountability for it. And the girls who have told, they were told it was their fault, that they brought this on themselves. They must be like promiscuous or something. And I'm like, you're really joking me that you think a 10-year-old is going to seduce somebody. It was just ridiculous that. And so as girls tell their stories, other girls listen, and they just don't want to be subjected. And anybody who's ever been like a rape survivor or a sexual abuse survivor, somehow it's always put on. So we're going to talk about the accountability factor, and when you're a foster child or just a girl in general, you aren't looked upon like you're telling the truth. It's like you're being dramatic or something, right? You're making this up. It wasn't quite what it was. Your stories, this person would never do it. I've known this person forever, and they would never do this to you. Okay, when someone is a pedophile or a sexual abuser, they don't always abuse everybody. It's not everybody on the block that they're going to do this to. But people they have access to, who they can keep quiet and manipulate and control. And what's better than a foster child that you feed, and you will feed if they do, if they go and tell. So there is a problem with accountability when it is told, and also follow through with a lot of caseworkers and they don't report. So we're going to talk about what happens to an initial report when you do say something. Okay, so what happens when you do admit that you are being sexually abused or someone tried to touch you in an inappropriate way? Well, in my case, I did tell that my foster brother had tried to hurt me, and we had done. And my foster sister was well aware that what he had tried to do. And when I was talking about it, she knew. I only heard stories about it, and then it was slowly kind of like, I don't know, like sugar-coated. Like, oh, well, this didn't really happen. They were trying to get me to say something else happened. It was a misunderstanding. It was this. You're being dramatic. You know what? You've probably seen this on TV, and you're making this up. Why is it when a girl goes through something like this, we're making it up? Why is it? It's like, what were you wearing? What were you talking about? And I was like, we were talking about tornadoes. How do they go from a tornado to this? And then I found out that this boy he actually raped his sister. Okay, he actually attacked his sister and did this to her. And I'm like, you sent me on a walk with a predator. And so my foster father, he was a very male chauvinistic character. He believed that if a woman was sexually assaulted, or a girl was, that it's what she was wearing, what she was drinking, what she was talking about, and that she made this happen. He said that sexual assault and rape is the girl's fault. I heard him talking with his, where he would basically promote them to be out there sleeping with girls, but he would tell his daughters that they're not supposed to sleep with boys. They're not supposed to be doing that. So a lot of mixed information, how he wanted to raise the girls versus the boys. And it seems like when the boys were getting with the girls, it was like, it's like all good, you the man. But when girls did it, they were called nasty names. And I learned that from a young age. And I didn't know how else to reference, when I would talk about, the relations between, like sexual relations. So I saw it all as a bad thing. And I didn't want to have any part of it. I didn't want to be any part of the adult world where we talked about things like that. But it was such a common thing in the state for girls to talk about. They would even hide their pregnancies because they wanted to go to a foster home, and they knew if they were pregnant that maybe they couldn't go to a certain foster home. So this was all kind of kept secret at times. And when I say it's secret, we talked about it, amongst ourselves. We did try to tell our caseworker at some point, because that bad experience happened when we first were caseworkers. We were never able to do that again, because now it's on our records that we said that, and in a lot of cases, caseworkers would say that it was our fault, or that we make up stories. And once you tell people that we make up stories, they think that we're liars and nobody wants to listen to us. But you can't say 80% of the girls in foster care were making up stories. No, it was just covered up. It was covered up, and nobody wanted to take accountability for it. So we go and tell someone to help us, and we ended up being more abused about the situation, and it wasn't fair. And there's a lot of girls who actually are sexually abused, and because of that sexual abuse, they actually end up going on the streets because they think that's all they're for. And they're going to get paid, they're going to get this money, and it's really sad because, that's a life that some girls kind of feel forced into. Some girls do choose it. And so whichever way it is, but if you're forced into the streets, because that's the only thing you can do, and because of your lifestyle and what people have taught you is right or wrong, that's all you are to some people, that you just go out and do it. I knew a few girls who just said, that's all I'm for. I've been taught since I was a young age that that's all I'm good for. I'm just going to be good for that. And that's it. And there's some girls who actually choose that profession. They go and become, dancers and strippers and stuff, because that's how they know how to make money. And they can make a lot of money like that. And they might have 2 kids and they have no guy, there with them. So they end up doing this. And that's their choice. If it's their choice, it's different. But if it's that they're forced out there because that's all they think they're worth, then that's a big problem. It's a big problem. And a lot of girls in foster care were actually doing these things. They were selling themselves, and then staff members to join in and actually perpetrate it. It's like, okay, you're a staff member, you're supposed to protect these kids. It's like, where is the accountability? And caseworkers, did not want to hear these stories. Many girls have shared these stories with their caseworkers, and they were put into a psych ward. I'm going to talk about psych wards because there's a lot of kids who, whenever they went out on the limb and they said what was going on, they ended up in a psych ward. And they didn't just end up in a psych ward for a couple of weeks. They went for 6 or 7 months. They were locked up in state hospitals, and they were giving drugs that they didn't need. I was even put on some drugs at some point, and it's like, you want us to be zombies so then we're easier to take care of. We're not real people. We're not real children. We're just sitting rocking in a chair. I've seen kids that have been completely messed up on drugs, on these medications that are given to them. And we could just be locked up no matter what. And so if we said something against our foster parent, they know we were going to go tell our caseworker, they would lock us up. And they would make up all kinds of stories. And it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair what happened. Now, I had a few caseworkers that would just believe it. They'd be like, oh, she did what? She's doing this? Oh my God, she's doing that? Oh, I never saw this coming. Well, I guess she's where she needs to be. And then he never came to see me once. So what's a treatment plan with no one being there to be part of that treatment plan? So hospitals are sometimes used as a base and as a punishment to foster kids. And we could just be in for anything. Nowadays, you can't just be put in a psych ward. They call a special person out. And it's because it's going through the state insurance, and they'll make sure that this kid needs to be in the hospital. And then they will try to keep them in the home as much as possible because, of course, it's a lot more money to put a child in a psych ward and keep them there for a while than it is to get them out therapy, they come there maybe once a week or something. But I think a lot of foster parents want to kid themselves. They want to go and they want a perfect kid, and when we're not, we don't add up to being perfect. And then we end up, they want to put us somewhere and fix us. It's almost like they want to give us a happy pill and we come home, we're all happy. Well, that's just unrealistic. And I'm not saying that all foster parents think like this, but the foster parents that I encountered and I heard stories about did. And I always dreamed that there was a good foster home out there. I was going to find this good foster home. I even begged to go boarding school at some point because it was just, I didn't want to move no more. But I did have hope that I would find a home, but, I didn't find a home. So I just dreamed. So sometimes there's a song out there, that always rings a bell and it makes you think of foster care. And I always like the song, I still haven't found what I'm looking for, and that song means a lot to me because it really makes me think that I didn't find the foster home that I was looking for. And how many kids don't find foster homes that they're looking for, and it's not fair. It's not fair. And if we actually can figure out the foster care thing and look at the underlying issues in the foster care and how and why are kids becoming foster kids as well, we have to look at all of these issues to why kids are being pulled and end up in foster care. And sometimes, they kind of just want, when I say they, I mean the government, politicians, and other people involved with child's care and child welfare. They think that their degrees are going to solve the problem. They think that money is going to solve the problem. There's a lack of understanding in the system. And we talk about when you're in your natural home, and we have to deal with the issue of poverty, discrimination, racism. We also have to, and there's a lot of discrimination towards poor people who already receive Medicaid services and SNAP benefits and those kind of people. And we have to look at the underlying issues going on there with mental illness and housing. There's people who live in a one bedroom and they got 4 or 5 kids because they can't afford a bigger place. There's a housing market issue that is catastrophic. And also some people don't get into the Section 8 program to where their rent would be lowered and stuff. So there's a lot of programs there. And also childcare. There's a lot of parents who just leave their kids alone, or they let the 10-year-old watch everyone because they have to go to work. They have to get 3 jobs then to pay for. And a lot of these kids, are, all these adults, a lot of them were touched by foster care. There's a big connection to kids that were in foster care, and this is what they know. Then we also have kids that were raised by parents who collected checks. They collected food stamps and Medicaid, and that's all they know. So they just become the next generation, and they don't have an aspiration to go to go to college and stuff like that. They don't, because they weren't taught that. They were not college bound. Now when kids are in school, they're college bound. So So the recent statistics are in from for how many foster kids are in the state of Illinois. They have increased. So we have close to 18,000 foster children in the state of Illinois. The total count is 17,290. And what is said is that 3,347 are waiting for adoption. So these are kids that are available to be adopted, as a family would wish to adopt them. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the state of Illinois right now. There is just a lot of things going on. As we look at the foster care system, and we're in election year. So we're in election year, and we are seeing a lot of people who want to put themselves in a seat in the politicians. We have to all come together and combat the issue of foster care, and why are kids ending up in the system? Why are so many going in, and some of the kids are going in and out, and what can we do to keep kids with their families? Is there a way to keep the kids in the home and everything, and stop busting up families? We're breaking up families, and just because families are poor doesn't mean that they can't be good parents. And so we have to all sit down, and we all have to come to some conclusion here, because in the past years, we're talking about 30 years here, 40 years, we have not come up with a plan that works. And it is a failure. It's not only a failure of, child welfare systems and, the government in that state. It is actually the failure of everybody. When society's children, as foster children were called at one time, we have to all help foster kids. It is a group effort here, and we have to learn how to do that and get along. And I get really tired of hearing the Republicans are saying this, the Democrats are saying this, and it's this constant battle between the two groups. And then sometimes we'll hear them agree on an issue, and nothing is done. It's like, this is unacceptable that this is happening to foster kids, but then nothing changes. And I've sat here and watched the system just fall. And we had very few times where the system seemed to be stable. There was one director that actually had a handle on the DCFS system. He was a good director. And he did see the real problem and the needs, and he was very involved in the foster care system. Very involved. He did a really good job. And then, of course, he retired and got some directors. But it seems like the problem is handed from one director to the next, and one governor to the next. And we got representatives, and sometimes you have to question motives. Do they really care about foster kids? Do they really care? Because I don't recall ever seeing a representative ever at one of my shelters. They never have been there around the foster care issue. This year is election year. So I've heard that there's some new policies. And I'm going to talk about one of the policies, which I think shouldn't have need to be a policy. So one of the policies that is, it's actually a very interesting policy, and it is a DCFS children baggage, the youth baggage law, and it's like Senate Bill 2177. And this bill is very interesting because I actually talk about kids being throwing garbage bags, and how degrading it is. Our stuff is put in a garbage bag. So now there's going to be a law, been put in a policy that you can't do this. Okay, it took 25 years, 30 years to get a policy like this, right? How much effort was put into this policy? Shouldn't this policy been passed like in the beginning of foster care? Why in the world was it okay for us to move around in garbage bags? Common sense a thing, would you want to move your stuff around in garbage bags? I think that a lot of people have to just use common sense. You wouldn't want your kids moved around in garbage bags. So why would you want other kids to be moved around in garbage bags? So we get a law that says we can't do that. And as we know, in the state of Illinois, there's a lot of policies. And just like in a lot of other states, there's policies, but they don't get followed. They do not get followed. And I'm going to give you some examples of policies in a later podcast that's going to talk about policies. And to me, you can have policies, if they're not enforced, then who takes accountability for them not being enforced? How many people have to sit here and say, well, that's already a law. That's already a law. Oh, it's just not being enforced. Okay, I am tired of excuses. I want answers. I want solutions. And I want someone to take accountability. I want someone to actually take full accountability. And don't tell me, well, I wasn't the governor when this happened. I wasn't the director. But if I was director, what, it was going to be a day, a sunshine day, and nothing wrong would happen? I am tired of people telling me that. Oh, well, that's when you were a foster kid. It's not going on anymore. But then I meet foster kids who say that it's going on. It's a new day of technology, and it is the same story going on over and over again. Kids are still moving around, and they are moving around at faster rates. And so I don't want to hear that you're not going to take accountability. And so I get really upset. I get really upset when I hear people say that. Well, I wasn't the governor, I wasn't this, I wasn't that. I am really upset that no one takes accountability. And I'll give you an example of that. I sent an email to a representative. I've been sending emails to representatives for 4 years. And this representative, it's really his assistant that actually sent me the email back, not really the actual representative. But he sent it back to me and his assistant and said, I'm so saddened about your experience in foster care. And he knows how great of an issue this is. And he's working really, really hard to combat the issues in foster care. Thank you very much for getting in contact with us. Have a nice weekend. I had asked for an appointment with this representative. That wasn't mentioned. And that was it. And then I did meet with one representative, and he seemed very eager to help. And he listened to the stories that I shared. And he was a representative who did actually take notice, and he told me about the baggage law for the foster kids. And I was, happy, but really it shouldn't take 25 years to get a baggage law. It's like how I feel, and I'll just tell you how I really feel about all this, is that foster kids are not put up as a priority. We are not all taken care of in the same manner that the other kids are taken care of. So you have a lot of kids in the system, and it's not okay that you lose 1% or 2% or 20% of the kids in the foster care system just didn't thrive. But the other 80 did, other 90% did. So they should all be given the same opportunity. And when it is one failure, it's the failure of everybody. It is not the failure of just the director of DCFS. And I'm going to be talking a little bit more about what's going on in the state of Illinois right now, because things are a mess. And it could be because it is election year. And what are we trying to prove out there? What are we trying to say? What is the hidden messages? And are people trying to use issues as pawns during the election year? So, and I'm just going to mention some things that are going on in the state of Illinois and other states as well. Some big changes going on. So let's talk about the issues in the state of Illinois. According to statistics for 2021, in the state of Illinois, we have 17,290 foster children. Of that number, 3,347 are waiting for adoption. And some of them are not, and some will just sit in the system and linger. Some of them will actually find placements and actually come out of the system, hopefully less scarred than I was. So I always hope that for every child to find a home where they could be loved and cared for. But so many kids damaged within the first 5 years of being a foster kid that they never fully recover. So, in the state of Illinois, our director was put in contempt because he violated a court order, and it's been all over social media and everything. I watched his interviews, and of course, there's been a lot of talk about there should be hearings in Springfield on DCFS, and that the director should have to answer a lot of questions of why $1 billion that is given for the foster care system in the state of Illinois, why it is not being used. Well, they feel that it's not being used efficiently, and that we're not figuring out the problems in the foster care system. These foster care system problems go far beyond what anyone imagines. So can we really fault the director of DCFS and say he is the problem? He's the only problem. And to me, it's a group effort. It's a group effort. He doesn't just he's not the only member of his team. And thank God, because 17,000, almost 18,000 foster children, that's a lot of children. That's a lot of children. And we got to do better. We got to do better. We can't have kids sleeping on the floor. We can't have kids being moved from a home, and then we say, well, you can't be there, but you're going to go over here. Oh, sorry, you got to sleep on the floor. You got to be in this office for 6 or 7 months with very little care, very little love. Let me tell you, there's a lack of love in the foster care system. And kids, as we all know, will find a way to survive and find love in not probably the healthiest ways. So the director here, I don't think that the director should be dismissed. I don't think he should resign. I think that we should make this director, stay in office. Not make him stay in office. If he decides to resign, fine. But I think that replacing director after director is not a good idea, especially with the pandemic going on. Well, let's help him. Let's support him. Let's be there. And I would love to sit down with the director and see what his thoughts were. What is he thinking? What is his goals? And how hard is it to be the director of DCFS? We got another DCFS director actually resigned on November 24th of last year because, and that was in LA, because it's such a big job. It's such a big job. It's so good. I think we should actually have like 3 directors, honestly. Of course, our government wouldn't be saying that because it's a lot of money, but I really think we need more than one director. And the whole thing is that we have to support the director of DCFS. We have to support him. And as long as he did no wrongdoing and he's not violating any kind of ethics, or, he's not corrupt, then he should stay in office, and we should support him. We should find out what the issues are. What does he think? What direction we need to go? How do we help these kids? How do we promote foster care? How do we get more good foster parents? How do we not put kids in residential treatment facilities? And if we're going to say, as one governor did, I'm going to take away 500 beds in a residential treatment facility because I'm going to create specialized foster homes, but then that doesn't happen, then where does that leave kids? The kids are the ones who suffer at the hands of adults who make decisions for them. So how do you promote this? How do you get more good foster parents in there? How do you help these kids heal? Because ultimately, if these kids do not heal, like I've said many times, they go into society, and it is going to come out in society as they age. Kids with no love and no connections to people, and not the ability, and does not have the ability, they lack that ability to connect with people. You're talking about a lot of antisocial kids who are not going to develop relationships, and they're not going to last, and we are going to have issues at the end of the day. At the end of the year, we are going to have a lot of kids that are hurting. And really, a lot of these kids are just in a lot of emotional pain. And they don't know how to be adults. They have no clue. There's young mothers who don't know how to be mothers. And we have to help these children. We have to guide them and help them. So I think even though he's been put in contempt, we should help him and support him. We also should look at the other issues going on, in the foster care system as well, is that there's a lot of kids, we don't have placements for them. We don't always have placements. And when I was younger, I would say, okay, give it to the director because he's the one who did it all. But as you get older, you mature and you kind of see the bureaucracy behind the system. And like, it's not just one man, okay? Just like, the governor's not one man. It's just, the governor is one man, but the whole system, he doesn't just run the state by himself. I mean, we're all together in this. And I feel that, yes, we can actually have hearings. We can have special sessions on DCFS. We can go and do that, and we could talk about it, because it seems like that's all we've been doing is talking about it. We're talking about it 35 years, 40 years even. And how much longer are we going to talk about it? And see, I guess some people can just talk about it and talk about it and talk about it. And I don't want to feel that because it is an election year that foster care and DCFS is like this brand new issue, and now everyone's involved in talking about it. And there's some, representatives that have been talking about it for a while. But again, it just seems like we keep talking about it. We have to change it. And we have to really, really understand. And there was some representatives I actually emailed. I never heard back from. Never heard anything back from them. But there was like 3 representatives who actually came up with a new bill, and I think it was kind of vetoed. It was kind of like turned down by the governor, for various reasons. And they were involved in trying to get this policy passed, and that didn't happen. But why would you not want to talk to the former foster kids? Why would you not want to talk to them and bring them in? Because I think what we need to do is we need to bring in everybody. We have to just get everyone in there, sit down and talk, and listen to everyone's experiences and ideals. And then we have to move forward and try to find a solution and bring these kids to homes, or we have to heal their natural homes so that they don't end up in the foster care system. That's an option. And I want to think that that is being sought about with all the states, is that we are trying to keep kids in their homes, but we can't. There are kids that just cannot stay in their homes. They have to go to foster care. So how do we find the best foster parents and attentive foster parents? So that is something that we are all that we all need to think about as we move forward into doing our election here in the state of Illinois. So as we move forward with the with us talking about foster care, we have to talk about how children feel as they see all this talk about DCFS, and the kids who understand what's going on. And I was really upset about hearing about the little girl who is 10 years old, and she was brought to a hotel, and that just really affects me. And I can't imagine being 10 years old going through that. I went through things, but to go through that and to be used, just her thinking, her mental state of mind, and then how people, the perpetrators, were not arrested. And I understand how that would affect this child, is that people can get away and do whatever they want, because my abusers weren't arrested either. So I understand, and kids are a lot smarter than when I was 10, so she probably fully understands a lot of this and what was going on, and how she gets locked up in a psych ward and they run free. And a lot of that is such a common thing in DCFS. When kids should be taken away, they're not taken away, and it's really sad. that, because I should have been taken away years before. I should have never been placed back with my abusers, but I was constantly. So I did have that kind of opinion about that. People could do whatever they want to us because we're the kids and they're the adults, and they're not going to go to jail. And it's just not fair. It's not fair. And I grew up with those broken promises from workers and foster parents, and just I felt like a burden on the system that I was there, and that nobody wanted me, and I really, really needed that home. I really did. And because I didn't find it home, it affected me a great deal as I aged out of the system. I just didn't find that. I didn't find it. And so I do know how things work in the government as far as how laws get passed and how we interpret laws and how we can change laws. And I often wonder, of course, it's always said that we see politicians when it's election time, the representatives when it's election time. And how come we don't see them any other time? We see them very seldom, and I want to believe that the representatives are saying that they support the foster care reform and everything, and that they do. They really do. And it's not for prestige. It's actually for them to better the system for children, and that they care about the children. And with all these beds being missing and what's promised is that we're going to have more foster homes. You can never guarantee you're going to have more foster homes. That is not a guarantee that anyone should be giving anybody. We cannot guarantee things. What is unacceptable is unacceptable. But to create more foster homes, we have to also understand that it takes time and efforts. And I'm telling you is that you have to sit down and they have to change the way in who they're talking to, because no amount of degrees, no amount of money is going to figure out the foster care crisis. And I am a former foster child. I know what goes on there. It's still going on there. It is sad that it has been like 20 years since I was a foster kid. And I just can't imagine that we still haven't figured it out. So we all need to sit down with each other, understand what is going on and how to correct it. And we need to stop going for the frosting. We need to go into the batter. And we need to start there. And we need to help the families that are in these situations and try to see if we can get these kids, to stay in their home. But there's sometimes, like I said, you're not going to be able to do that. When you got drug abuse going on in the home, and their only care provider is using drugs. I mean, you can't leave kids in there. There's sexual abuse, and no, you can't. You cannot leave them there. So there's some times where we have to bring kids into the foster care system. But if we're going to take away kids, we better make sure they are having a better life. We better make sure. And if someone isn't doing that, someone needs to take accountability. And I want someone to take accountability and not blame it on the other guy. I mean, oh my goodness. I get whiplash with politicians who are just like, well, I wasn't the governor. Well, I wasn't the representative. I wasn't these people. Because in my experience, I've heard that too many times. So as I start to go into the book, The Innocent Eyes of a Child, I will be going through the book and talking about the experiences, the god-awful experiences, which I hope will create change. And it actually created my desire to write a bill, called the Foster Child Awareness Initiative Bill. And it actually talks about, a lot of foster kid rights, a lot of things that should happen. And I was told by a representative that he said that a lot of these things are probably already in statute and they're in policies and everything, and they're just not being enforced. Again, why are we not enforcing this stuff? We should not only take notice to a foster child when a foster child or a child who shouldn't have been foster care dies. We should take notice now. We should take notice at the moment of every foster child, because every foster child is important. Every child doesn't even make it there. So this is like a call for action, and not just from the foster parents, not just the good foster parents, not just good from the politicians. This is a call for action to the foster kids, the kids who didn't become foster kids, because you have to remember, some kids are not taken away. Okay, some kids don't even know they've been abused. This is a call from action for the formal foster kids. We all come together and we can make a positive change for foster kids all over the place. You know, I didn't write my book for prestige. I didn't write my book to make money off of it. I wrote this book to share my story, to say, here, look at my story. Look at all the other foster kids' stories. Now it's time to reform. It's way overdue to reform. And it's way overdue for accountability. We must come together on this issue. We must sit down and we must talk about it. And that means we gotta tell the truth. And I think that every foster care system needs to just admit we have failed and we need to go back to the drawing board and we need to try this again. We don't know what to do. We have to admit to ourselves that we just don't know how to solve this problem and we need help. And they can bring in another special unit that's similar to like DCFS, but it's like another agency that can actually oversee things in the foster care system and who's like a backup system. And I think that's what we need to do. And so if we're going to have like special hearings and all that, that's great. But let's talk to people who actually were part of the system. Let's talk about, let's talk to everyone. Let's get everyone involved, the whole community, the whole state, the whole country. And it's on the city level, local level, it's on a state level, and a federal level. So we can solve this problem once and for all and help these kids heal. So as we continue to look for answers for the foster care crisis and for children who are locked in the system, and they really do feel trapped at times. I know I did. I felt trapped many times as time went on, that I had no control. And that's why we see kids in the foster care system. They act out. They start to control what they can control. And a lot of the times it comes out in a different way than what people would like to see. Also, to recap, I really feel strongly that we can make the foster care system a better place. And if we can try to get the numbers down and try to take away as small numbers of children as we can, that would be something in the positive direction. But I don't mean to leave kids in the home that should be in foster care. Unfortunately, we have to accept the fact that there are going to be kids in foster care. We need this foster care system, but we need a foster care system that is compassionate and understands the needs of the children. And I'm not going to say that everyone who is a foster parent is bad. Everyone who is a politician or looking for a re-election, they are going to use this issue of foster care to try to get reelected and to attack their opponent with this. But I do believe during this election, I think we need to take a long look at problems that the state is having. And as we look at those issues, that we can definitely say foster care should be up on the higher part of the list. And because I think the person who gets into office is going to have to make a lot of decisions. Or if the same people get in office, they're going to have to deal with this issue. Policies have to change in foster care. I mean, they really do. And it shouldn't take 25 years. It breaks my heart that it took 25 years, 20 to 25 years really, to get policies changed. Say that we shouldn't put kids' belongings in a garbage bag. And it just makes me feel that maybe we weren't a priority. Maybe we weren't cared about the way we should have been. And that damage is still evident in kids as they grow up, as they become adults, as they become parents. And I won't sit here and lie and say it doesn't affect me. When I see a kid has been taken into custody, it saddens my heart. It saddens my heart. that a child is now in foster care. But do they need to be there? How long will they be there? I always overthink the situation because I want to know what it is like, what's going on with that child. Like, why were they taken away? And sometimes you can find out because I do mentor foster kids. And sometimes it's emotional abuse. Sometimes they've been abandoned, especially during the pandemic. A lot of kids have been literally abandoned. They've been orphaned. We have kids who have been abused. Now, abuse is one hard thing because if it's physical abuse, they have to go out of the home. Usually they do. And there's no way really out of it. Sometimes we can have family members who can step in and help take care of the child or children involved. But sometimes they can't, and they don't have any relatives or anything. And so the kids have to be in custody. There's sometimes where they can be left in the home, and with help, they can actually perhaps keep that family together. But my thing is that we would love to keep the family together, and I always want the family together. But I don't want the kid to be abused. I don't want the kid to have to go through what I went through. And I don't want to see any more kids murdered by their parents. And they don't get into the foster care system. But there's no perfect solution to the problem. There really isn't. And like I said, I don't think any amount of money or even degrees that people have, and the higher up you are with your education, I just don't think that is the answer, is that we need to listen to this person because they have a master's degree or they have a PhD. They're a doctor. They've done this. Okay, we've sat here and watched everyone with the degrees talk. Okay, we have watched everyone. And I'm an educated person. I have master degrees. But I don't know everything. I don't. But that's why we all can sit together and we can talk. And I think that everyone needs to start talking to the formal foster kids, talk about what we went through. We need to talk about the truth. And then we do need to get together with, representatives, state representatives and senators and other politicians so we can all sit down and decide what laws should be changed. What laws should be actually just altered maybe and maybe enforced. So I would really like to see that happen. And like I said a few times in this podcast, that I want to make sure that, I want to hope that everybody who is talking about this right now, they are really, really dedicated to the help to children. And that it's not about a re-election, it's not about an election, it's not about you talking, about it because you're trying to get something out of it, and that your heart is in the right place, and that you want to talk about this because you are sick of hearing about it, like I am. We are sick of hearing about kids dying. We are tired of mistreatment and maltreatment to children. And that's what I want everyone to come out of this with, is that we change, and through change, we can make their life better. But the constantly switches with the DCFS director. When I first heard the contempt charges, I was like, oh my God, that is terrible. It doesn't only reflect badly on our DCFS system. It reflects badly on our state. It's like, what are we doing over there? But I want to make sure that it is being dealt with. And I feel that we are talking about it. Everyone's talking about it. The media is talking about it. But my heart is in a place where let's find solution to the problem. Let's sit down, let's talk, let's get everything put out there. But it should be allowed so that everyone is involved in this process, not just legislators, not just the government, representatives, not just local enforcements. Everyone has to be involved in this. And don't leave the formal foster kids out of it, because we were there. We were the kids. And some of us were abused. Not all of us, but some of us were abused, and we want to make it better. I didn't just come back and write it because I wanted to be known. I want to be in the media. I want all this attention. I wanted to create a change for a movement. I wanted to sit down with everyone, and I wanted to get the word out there. This is what's going on. Where do we go from here? And I hope everyone's Everyone's heart is in the right place to do this. And I want to believe that as individuals and human beings, that we all could come together, the public and the government, and we can come up with positive change for children in the care so that we don't end up creating another generation that has no love, that has no connection to people, and that they can feel safe, and that they're not put in centers, unwelcome centers, to lay on the floor and be given nothing, because I don't think people understand how bad that can make you feel. So let's just make it better for all foster kids and everyone involved. Let's all come together as one unit. And I think that we will solve this problem in foster care.